We have an interesting opening ceremony today, which will be presented by Oregon playwright Toni Douglass as Abigail Scott Duniway. It also features Barbara Callander as Clara Buick Colby. They are guests of Representative David Gomberg, and they're bringing us a scene from Ms. Douglass's play Scott Free, which traces the life of Abigail Scott Duniway. As you know, disagreements do occur from time to time among those of us in politics. Abigail Scott Duniway was no exception to this. She frequently disagreed with the National American Women's Suffrage Association. So let's go now to Abigail's home in Portland in 1906 and listen in on one of those disagreements.
Mrs. Duniway, we in the National Organization are aggrieved that you cannot seem to see the larger picture. The vote is only the first step to real reform. Men must change or the world will never find its way out of darkness and sin. We must show them the error of their ways and raise them to a higher moral plane. When women vote, the virtuous moral way will prevail in public policy at last.
You think to force virtue on a sinner because the majority has voted for it? Nothing about your high moral tone will ever move the average sinner an inch. What is your moralizing to men? The bleating of inferiors designed to dampen their pleasures. Do you wonder that they don't listen?
If they don't listen, it is because they are past redemption.
If they don't listen, it's because they're tired of the caterwauling. They'd rather be out raising hell. And small wonder.
You mock me, Mrs. Duniway.
You slander me, Mrs. Colby. My personal morals are very like yours, I would guess. I abhor the excesses of men, but the men of this world care not a fig for my abhorrence, or for yours, and they never will care. Far, far above morality, what men care for is the respect of other men, and men respect power, and power only. Men stand at the top of the mountain. There is nothing up there to impress but each other. And nothing in this world is more important to a man than that he not appear to be weak in the eyes of other men. A man who has not the respect of other men is not a man. Therefore, there is almost nothing that he will not do to gain it. The respect of women? What should he care for that? Women have no power.
But we will.
No, we will never get the vote from men by earning their respect. We will get the vote from men because they respect other men who say we should have it. Enough other men with sufficient power to command their respect. Then, and only then, and not before. Now, while you aggrieved ladies in the National Organization cannot see this, here in Oregon, I have a much clearer vision. I have quietly hunted prominent men for years, Mrs. Colby. I have laughed at their jokes, tolerated their crudities, forgiven their failings, stroked their self-importance, and won their support. And it is they who will convince the masses of men. It is they who will quell the fears of the average voter. And not with moralizing, far from it.
What can you mean by this?
I mean that we cannot legislate morality. We might be able to tax it, however. That is, tax the behaviors that result from its absence.
Build our government on the wages of sin?
And with the revenue, build the opportunities that allow for advancement in the world. When a man is busy succeeding, he's much less likely to sink into immoral behaviors. He is, in fact, much more likely to reform on his own because he can see a reason to do so, a reason of his own. Mrs. Colby, try and understand. Any man is as good or as evil, as moral or otherwise, as he has decided to be. And his decision is not something I will ever vote on. Even when I have the vote. I don't want the vote to push the men down. I want the vote to raise the women up.
I'm just speechless.
Good. Go home, Mrs. Colby. Go home to Washington, D.C., and joust with the men who are blocking the federal amendment.
There will be an amendment.
Oh, yes, of course. On that we do agree. It's inevitable. But it will only come when there are enough equal suffrage states, a number sufficient to tip the balance. So leave Oregon to me. It will be one of those states. Just leave Oregon to me.
Thank you, Ms. Douglass and Ms. Callander. I think that's the first time we've had a play to start our session, and we appreciate it. Courtesies. Representative Gomberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. I hope you enjoyed a delightfully different courtesy this morning, and I hope, too, that as Ms. Duniway watches down on us every day from the names around the chamber, that she, too, would appreciate this excerpt from her life and part of the story that brought women the vote here in Oregon. I will tell you that Barbara Callander and Toni Douglass are from Seal Beach in my district. They bring over 25 years of professional acting experience to their performances. Ms. Douglass is a graduate of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and has acted in theaters throughout the United States. She's also an established director, playwright, and teacher. Ms. Callander has appeared with theaters nationwide and also worked extensively as an arts administrator. Together, Ms. Callander and Ms. Douglass have been touring original plays about women's history for almost 20 years. There is a copy of the playbill on your desk today from their production of Scott Free. Now, I know most of us will be traveling home this weekend, but for those that will be staying in Salem, or for staff or visitors that may be in Salem this weekend, on Saturday, May 9th, the Salem Public Library will present the entire performance of their play Scott Free, The Life of Abigail Scott Duniway. The play will be presented at 2:30 p.m. in the Laux Auditorium at the library's main branch. Admission is free for Scott Free, with seating on a first-come, first-seated basis. Doors open at 2:15. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative.